It's Wednesday, October 7th, and this is now on HNN.
You can't throw caution to the wind once you open up.
Dr. Fauci says the state can reopen to tourists, but should do so gradually and carefully.
That's not gonna be enough.
Meanwhile, there are more calls for visitors to take a second test upon arrival.
The vice presidential debate takes on new significance and new safety precautions. I'm Natalie Brand at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City with how the coronavirus will be front and center on stage tonight.
These stories, plus a man has been charged with orchestrating a cyber attack on HPD. That's coming up on This Is Now.
Good afternoon. Let's take a live look from Utah. Additional coronavirus safety measures are in place here ahead of tonight's vice presidential debate between Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris. We're going to have much more on this coming up in just a moment. But first, let's get a look at your coronavirus numbers.
Hey everyone, health officials say 3 more patients with COVID-19 have died. That brings Hawaii's official death toll to 163. DOH is also reporting 110 new cases today. 90 are on Oahu, 18 on the Big Island, and 2 residents were diagnosed out of state. We want to take you live now to Waikiki, the tourism mecca of Hawaii. Governor Ige is holding a 2:30 press conference this afternoon on the state's pre-travel testing program. And as the state prepares to reopen to tourism in just 8 days, Hawaii County's mayor says he plans to opt out of the state's pre-travel testing program, and Maui and Kauai appear to be debating whether to participate too. On Oahu, Honolulu City Councilman Tommy Waters introduced a resolution, and it's up for a vote today. He, like many other leaders, want travelers to be required to take a second test upon arrival or have the state once again postpone the restart of tourism.
All I'm saying is open up safe, and 36 hours quarantine, that's not much to ask, right? Because get this, if you can afford to quarantine for 36 hours, when you get out of quarantine, you're gonna go eat in our restaurants, you're gonna go shop in our stores, right? We don't want the cheap tourists who just gonna come and eat pizza from Costco. You know what I mean?
Lieutenant Governor Josh Green says he does support doing surveillance testing on travelers upon arrival, but he says those calls for a second test are just not practical. Today, he had an online discussion with the nation's top infectious disease doctor, Anthony Fauci.
One of the things that we do here that might help you to think this out is that when you go into the White House, like I do frequently, you have to get tested right there. It's a 15-minute test. That's the good news. The somewhat sobering news is that it's not a 100% sensitive test. So it's easy to screen the 50 people that want to go into the White House, but you know that it has about a 20% lack of sensitivity. It's only 85%. So you have the advantage of screening all these people quickly, because if you had to wait a day and a half of a really sensitive test, you'd have a line trying to get in there that would never work. So you sacrifice sensitivity for the ability to do it. So I know what you're getting to is that you're faced with, you're trying to open up the islands. You don't want to get another surge of cases because you've done so well in putting the lid on where you are. So you have the people who are there saying, you know, we don't want to reinsert COVID into where we live. On the other hand, if we don't open up, the economy is going to crash even more than it's crashing.
Some Big Island businesses are fearing the worst after Mayor Kim's decision to opt out of the pre-travel testing program. We've got Mark Carpenter now with reaction.
Colby Moser has owned Aria Studios for 12 years, a Waimea-based company that specializes in filming weddings and commercials. They usually shoot 150 weddings annually, but this year only a handful. and the county's decision to keep visitor restrictions is crippling to operations.
The possibility of my business going under is very real, and we deal with that week by week.
Moser frustrated with the island's leadership on failing to come up with a plan to reopen. After hearing last month that pre-testing may be an option, she planned for a business trip to New York. But with the quarantine still in place, that might not be possible.
At this point, it's been 7 months, and it doesn't seem like there's any plan in place. I mean, Hawaii Island, to me, it's extending the lockdown is just lazy to me. They could figure something else out. They can do the pre-testing, they can pre-travel, they can do post-travel, contact tracing. I mean, figure it out. Like, that's your job.
The Kona Kohala Chamber of Commerce says it was surprised to hear the mayor's decision and is concerned for the businesses who will continue to see losses after already making preparations to resume.
Businesses have already done that for this October 15th opening date. And they've already gotten reservations in. So the idea of stopping this momentum again is extremely frustrating and is not a good thing.
However, not all companies disagree with Mayor Kim. Photographer Bruce Omori operates an art gallery in downtown Hilo where business has been decimated during the pandemic. But without approval for a second test, he understands the quarantine.
Yes, I want to open my business again, but yet I'm, really afraid of somebody being a carrier, being infected with the virus coming into our gallery. So I do agree with Mayor Kim's stance on this issue.
Omori adds that he would be in favor of reopening if there were more testing protocols in place. And Moser says that the state is sending a confusing message to incoming travelers by not having unified regulations. All part of the tricky dynamic in trying to reopen Hawaii safely. Mark Carpenter, Hawaii News Now.
Meanwhile, Hawaii News Now requested an interview with Governor Ige to discuss these developments. We have made it clear that we are willing to have the governor answer questions live or on video, and he has refused. The last time he agreed to an interview was September 18th. We do expect him to hold a general media briefing this afternoon. This morning on Sunrise, we spoke to Chad Blair at the Honolulu Civil Beat. He spoke about all the changes at the Department of Health under the new director, Dr. Libby Char.
Chad, first of all, the article seems to indicate some optimism about the new director, does it not?
Well, that's the reaction I had after I read the story from Brittany Light, who interviewed not only Dr. Char, but many people that know her. And even though she's only been on the job just 3 weeks now, and we're entering the 7th month of this pandemic, there's a sense that while she knows and acknowledges that we, being the state, is in a tough place, there's a sense that we are doing the right things to try and get back to business, to restore confidence with the public and build partnerships. That's the impression I got after reading Brittany's story, which is our lead story today.
Yeah, what has she done differently from Bruce Anderson?
Well, certainly part of it's just her own persona. While she's sticking with the 3 pillars that we were speaking about earlier with Dr. Fauci and Dr. Green, contact tracing, testing, isolation when people are found to be infected. I think she's described by people that know her as calm, as flexible, someone who's a straight shooter, someone who is fair, someone who's very tough-minded, but also a very hard worker. Her greatest challenge, in addition to contact tracing and testing and so forth, is really to give the public a sense of confidence that they can trust what the Department of Health is doing. And that's something, that confidence, that trust, has been lost over the last 6 or 7 months as we struggle through this crisis. So for now, at least, going into this, there's a very good sense that new leadership, a fresh look, is going to bring a different response and hopefully help us get out of this crisis sooner.
Yeah, and then of course there's the challenge looming ahead with October 15th and the influx of tourists. What are the other leaders, people that she must collaborate with, saying about her?
Well, really, she's been reaching out and doing a lot of talking with people, a lot of meetings, and that includes not just only medical professionals, but people in the business community, She really wants to try and empower the counties to respond better, to operationalize. I think that's the word that Brittany used in her story. Their ability to respond, to get enough beds for isolation and quarantining. Thus far, the feedback that we hear from our reporter, Brittany Light, is very encouraging. They like the fact that she's very accessible. I mean, that was one of the frustrations that people had under the previous tenure of Dr. Bruce Anderson, that people were not always getting what they needed from the Department of Health. She's talked a lot, Dr. Char, about transparency, about sharing data, about being as open as possible.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have. So it's nice to see, at least early on. Chad Blair, again, joining us from Civil Beat. Thanks, Chad. Also, don't forget to visit civilbeat.org/events to register for all of Civil Beat's free online events, including tomorrow's data-focused panel discussion about Hawaii's economy. All right, don't forget also to tune in later today for Coronavirus Pandemic Businesses on the Brink. It is a town hall discussion with businesses that are struggling to stay open, and there's a lot of them. So that's tonight, 9 p.m. on KHNL.
U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams was cited for being in a closed Hawaii park back in August. This was taking place while he was here helping with that surge testing effort. According to the criminal complaint, an officer saw Adams with 2 other men taking pictures at Kualoa Regional Park. Adams apparently told the officers he wasn't aware that the park was closed at the time. The U.S. Surgeon General's office had no comment on the citation. A remote hearing is set for October 21st. A 29-year-old Waikiki man has been charged with orchestrating email attacks on HPD's computers. Authorities say those attacks targeted servers that were used to enforce stay-at-home violations. Rick Dasog reports.
You can traverse the parks.
Back in August, when Mayor Kirk Caldwell issued a second stay-at-home order for Oahu, he and Honolulu Police Chief Susan Ballard unveiled a new hotline to report violations. But the day after the hotline went live, thousands of emails attacked its server, interfering with the HPD's ability to respond to complaints for nearly 2 days. Authorities called it an email bomb.
It's basically what we call a DNS, a denial of service attack, where the system gets overloaded with data coming in that is not able to handle and process all that data. So it's like clogging the pipes, basically.
A criminal complaint filed today says that between August 9th and August 10th, the sender delivered more than 2,200 emails, or one email sent every 30 seconds for 20 hours straight. This is what the HPD's COVID enforcement email account looked like.
There was a lot of digital cookie crumbs left behind by the culprit.
The complaint says investigators traced the emails to this man in Waikiki.
Oh, can you say your name, please?
Chris Grotto.
All right.
Police raided Grotto's apartment last month and arrested him on first and second-degree computer damage charges. According to his LinkedIn page, Grotto is a dance instructor, an Army veteran, and an expert marksman. After the attack, investigators looked into Grotto's social media accounts, searching for a possible motive. They found this GoFundMe page showing Grotto equipped with military gear. He was seeking donations to cover his bail for an arrest during a Black Lives Matter protest in May. Police arrested him during the march for illegally carrying ammunition. His attorney says he's not dangerous.
Just noting that this is a non-violent offense.
But prosecutors disagreed.
The defendant has prior arrests in 2020 for illegal possession of ammunition and also for C felony promoting a harmful drug.
Grotto remains in custody, unable to make the $100,000 bail. He'll be back in court on October 20th. Rick Dasog, Hawaii News Now.
The former Minneapolis police officer seen kneeling on George Floyd's neck before he died was released from prison after posting $1 million bail. Derek Chauvin is charged with second and third degree murder and other charges in Floyd's death. On May 25th, video captured Chauvin kneeling on Floyd's neck for almost 8 minutes. Floyd was handcuffed at the time and repeatedly told officers he couldn't breathe before going limp. 3 other ex-policemen are charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder.
The one and only vice presidential debate between Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris is just hours away. Extra safety measures have been put in place for tonight's highly anticipated matchup. Natalie Brand reports from the University of Utah in Salt Lake City.
The vice presidential candidates will face off separated by new safety precautions, including plexiglass and increased social distancing. Their desks positioned more than 12 feet apart. The debate commission also says guests without masks will be escorted out of the hall, something it did not fully enforce for the first presidential debate.
There is no playbook for it.
Jason Perry of the University of Utah says tonight takes on new significance with uncertainty surrounding the next presidential debate. President Trump's diagnosis and the White House outbreak will bring the coronavirus into even sharper focus on stage.
The tentacles from it go to every segment of our country, right down to the economy itself. The path forward is unclear, made even less clear by what's happened over this past week. And I think that is going to be a center point of this debate.
Senator Kamala Harris is expected to prosecute the Trump administration's pandemic response, while Vice President Mike Pence is expected to defend his leadership of the president's coronavirus task force. Utah polling shows COVID-19 and the economic fallout remain top issues for voters here. Tanisa Wright is a registered Republican, but says she's undecided.
I would like to hear more about their policies, about what they're going to do.
Clayton Thomas says he's also undecided after voting for President Trump in 2016. He hopes tonight's tone is an improvement over last week's interruptions and attacks.
Mr. President, I'm the moderator of this debate, and I would like you to let me ask my question.
I think being able to actually have the candidates be civil in their actions as well as their words.
Both Harris and Pence are known as skilled debaters, and political analysts expect to see the candidates sharp and focused. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Salt Lake City.
Thank you, Natalie. Going to be exciting stuff there for sure that's coming up on both our networks, KGMB, CBS, KHNL, NBC. Will have special coverage for you, so look for that there. Want to take you outside again because this shot is just gorgeous and surf's up for a lot of folks. I know that's where Guy Hoggy's headed.
How's it on this Wednesday? We're tracking some moisture up in the East Pacific. It should drop into the state with a few more scattered showers sometime between Sunday and Monday. Hopefully it brings us some meaningful rainfall because much of the state is still suffering in drought conditions. A little bit of moisture this morning for the east end of the state. However, the rain that's coming down over in Hilo and out towards Hana is basically of the light variety. Now, the winds will be of the light variety as well. Of course, it'll be a little stronger over in Maui County. Otherwise, everybody else, except for Kona, will get trade winds running about 10 to 15 miles an hour today. And that means it's still going to be a little on the humid side. Lots of sunshine will drive temperatures to 90 degrees over in Maui, maybe a little bit cooler over in here in Honolulu. But remember, yesterday, Kahului got to 93. So those are just projections. And projections for the surf look really good, really encouraging, especially for South Shores when this swell coming up today actually has peaked already. So maybe a couple of feet overhead at the better spots. If you're a beginner, you best to maybe sit out for a day or so before this thing starts to settle down. And then East Shore is going to get action from Tropical Storm Marie. And up in the country even, there's a swell that's likely due in later this afternoon. So we're going to get a beautiful day today, high temperature running to about 89 degrees, and the UV index is at 10. And again, what we see today will likely continue for the next several days, although we're hoping for that moisture to come into those windward and Mauka areas sometime starting on Sunday. Keep it here on Hawaii News Now. We'll have all your severe weather updates.
Thank you very much, Guy. We're going to see what the internet is talking about today. And I really like this first story. Really interesting. We've been telling you about those cool things going up for auction. A lot of times it's celebrity things. Well, now it's a super nerdy thing that I like. And that is a T-Rex. Have you heard about this? Let me pull it up for you. I'll show it to you. This T-Rex goes by Stan. It's the world's most complete T-Rex skeleton. Stan walked the earth 67 million years ago, just like me. He stands 13 feet tall. I wish I was that tall. 40 feet long, and is made of more than 188 bones. The bones were first found in Montana, North and South Dakota, and Wyoming way back in 1987. You guessed it, by a researcher named Stan. The auction was estimated to go for about $8 million, but it broke those records last night, being sold for $31.8 million. I was so interested about this, I went to Wikipedia, you know, that official site, and we were just reading. It was interesting. They said that he has they were able to find out that he had a lot of injuries by his puncture wounds in his skull, as he must have been in some dinosaur fights, and they said that he was even injured so badly, like some of his vertebrae were fused together from injuries.
Poor Stan.
I know, poor Stan. Rough.
I wonder, though, because since he's a T-Rex, I mean, he's pretty much,
I think he won some of those fights. I think so. He had to.
I don't know. Those injuries sound pretty bad.
Yeah, what'd you find?
Oh, so I know people have been baking bread, they've been doing TikTok videos, some have started home gardens to kill time during the pandemic. Well, apparently, a lot of people have also been preserving and canning their own food, which has led to a shortage of mason jars and lids. Now, a spokesperson for a canning products company said the entire canning industry has recently experienced an unprecedented demand, and there are limited products available at stores and online.
And you know, we're big time day traders now. We're getting into our first E-Trade accounts together, having a little fun with that. But I did notice, I read an article on there about how most glass companies are actually seeing an increase of profitability because of things like medical supplies too, like vials for all these vaccines that are being produced ahead of the actual vaccine's release. They need glass vials and things too. So I
we
know,
should
like,
be investing in mason jars.
It was already so high, I can't even afford it yet. Seriously. You guys, big birthday, Instagram turning 10.
10?
We have a 10-year-old on our case. Yeah. This social media giant is celebrating that 10th birthday, and to do so, it's switching back to temporarily to its old traditional retro logo. Retro, like 10 years ago is vintage or something. It's a redesign of its current logo, but to access it, you're going to have to do a little riddle-solving mystery work in a cryptic tweet that Instagram sent out today. So check out the tweet if you want to access that new logo.
That makes me feel old.
Right? And we were talking, like, originally it was about filters back then, but it was like that one filter that looked like a Polaroid camera.
Grainy.
Yeah, I think the logo even looked like an old school Brownie camera, which it sort of does still now.
And this is really cool, you guys. So an astronomer who worked for decades at the Big Island's Keck Observatory just won the highest award in science. Andrea Ghez, she is one of 3 scientists sharing the 2020 Nobel Prize in Physics.
Oh my goodness, I was surprised. I was fast asleep.
When Andrea Gez's home phone rang at 2 in the morning, she feared the worst. But it turned out to be one of the most joyous moments of her life.
I was just thrilled and a bit speechless and tongue-tied, you know, when you're just so surprised. It's a pretty amazing moment.
Ghez is one of 3 scientists who unraveled some of the deep mysteries of black holes, the pockets of the universe where space and time cease to exist. She started her work using Keck Observatory's telescope atop Mauna Kea 25 years ago.
She had to ask beg a colleague to give her some time, because it was regarded as such a crazy idea. And then here we are 25 years later, she's got the Nobel Prize for this incredible result.
Her hard work led to evidence of a supermassive black hole, 4 million times the mass of our sun, at the center of the Milky Way. She is only the 4th woman to be awarded the Physics Prize.
I'm a huge believer in the importance of role models. And so I'm just delighted to become another role model to encourage the next generation of women to pursue their passion in science.
Ghez is a professor at UCLA, but is often here in the islands.
And she's done a ton here in Hawaii. She's done lots of our public lectures. I can remember a couple of years ago, she packed the People's Theatre in Honokaa to talk about this work. So, you know, she loves being in Hawaii. She feels like she's part of our community. She's been here so long.
Ghez will now receive a Nobel diploma and medal and share the prize money of more than $1.1 million.
Thanks for watching. This is Now. And guys, coming up today at 5 and 6, we'll have more on a Hilo High grad that also won the Nobel Prize. Take care.